Hello, Culture Matters podcast. Today, I'm about to introduce you to an exciting guest. Before I do that, here's a quote I picked just for this episode. A proud man is always looking down on things and people. And of course, as long as you are looking down, you cannot see something that is above you. C.S. Lewis. See, we believe here, Culture Matters, when people read to think, write to develop, listen to hear what is unsaid, and speak to let go, they develop more value for themselves and others. So our purpose of this podcast is to uncover the genius of our guest with the goal to make you, the listener, your curiosity cool. Because our vision is that human culture is open, curious, and focused on creating the future. So our mission is to read, write, listen, and speak every single day. I'm excited to introduce you to our guest today, Robert Fehafer, who besides titles as the founder of Guardian Home Improvements, is a dear friend of mine. I get emotional talking about it. An impactful person who is a leader of not only people in the context of, like I said, home improvements, those that need roofing when there's storms, where there's damage, and they don't know how to navigate a conversation of conflict between insurance companies, all the things that are out of reach for them. Robert's guardians come in and they steward that relationship and help people solve their actual problems, their life issues, starting at the home. But more than that, Robert is a man of faith. He's a pious man. He's a leader of leaders. He's a thoughtful person. He's a thinker, a feeler, just a great person. And I challenge you to listen to this conversation a few times and follow Robert Fehafer, who's been a great value add to me personally in my life. I'd like to say more, but I think I'll just see how you're doing today. Thank you. I even have thoughts. I'm very curious what you think of the quote, which I don't mind reading again, because I always like picking your brain. So thank you for agreeing to do this, Robert.
It's my pleasure, Jay. Thanks for having me on, and thank you for such a heartfelt, introduction. I appreciate it, and yeah. So thanks for having me here today. And I'm willing to share my thoughts on that quote that you read in the beginning, and I'm open to having you read it again. But the one thing that stuck out to me, as I took a couple notes when you said it, right, that I think it was something along the lines of a proud man who's looking down on people is not seeing what's above. That would be my paraphrase, but would you read it again so I make sure that I'm not out of context?
A proud man is always looking down on things and people. And of course, as long as you are looking down, you cannot see something that is above you. And I believe the context is of a theological. C.S. Lewis was, so just to give some context to the audience, I'm always curious of your understanding and your grasp of faith. So that's why I picked the quote. I pick a different quote for every episode, but that's the context, right? Like, as long as you are looking down, you cannot see something that is above you. So what does that make? Does anything rise up in you? What are your immediate thoughts or feelings that rise up in you if you hear that quote? Is it just a poor choice for this episode? Or
Well, thanks for asking. So generally, I know we have a goal here for a timed discussion between the two of us to end at 11:30 today, and based off of past experiences, we could just land here for the next hour and a half. We could talk about what I think, what you think on these things, and that's what's always this. And I will say, before I answer that question, I want to share with the audience. This is I've recorded a few monologue podcasts on my own. I've been doing a little bit of, content creation through video in the field, in the office with some other people minimally. But this is my first podcast being interviewed. And I have not had a podcast of my own with another person. So, coming into this, you asked me before, am I excited? Like, yes, there's excitement, there's nervousness, there's concern. I look at this as this is, it's funny, like so many things pop through my brain. And I grew up listening to like rap music and everything. And there's, one Eminem song, right? He talks about lose yourself in the moment. You own it, never let it go. You only got one shot. Do not miss your chance. So for me, that this opportunity, and I actually try to, when those type of word tracks go on in my head, I actually try to talk to God and say, like, please, like, help me remove that. This is important. This is important. And I think that's where that was coming from, because this is an important opportunity for me to share it. And I hold it in a high regard because I'm actually putting myself out there and what I represent. And I want to do that truthfully. And I want to do that in a clear way and provide value. And the biggest thing that comes up for me is like, whoa, like you are stepping out of the shadow and into the view. What's important to talk about, right? And for me, the thing that rises up is faith, right? That's the eternal thing, the relationship with God, the plan of this world and what we're doing here. And now we do have work, we have family, we have people, we have influence. But this quote is great, to circle back to that. So to answer the question, there are a few things that rise up. I've heard the name C.S. Lewis. I have not read his content. He's mentioned by, pastors that I've listened to and in small groups, or maybe books that have come through, quotes. So I don't know C.S. Lewis's history. I don't know what part of time he was, what faith, where his beliefs were, what his story is. But his quote that you pulled here about someone that's always looking down is not seeing what's above you. Yes, that the first thing that actually, I'll say this, the first thing that comes to my mind when you said that was with the looking down. It's a, and it talks about a proud man, right? So pride is something that I can't speak for others. It seems from my paradigm, my worldview, that there are many prideful people. I can talk about myself. I am a prideful person. There's something that goes on with accomplishments, with successes, with and I feel like at some points there's an excitement, a healthy acknowledgement of challenges being handled or problems being solved. But there's also a closed-mindedness that comes along with pride. And when I hear this one with the proud man looking down, it makes me think of being like a judgmental person on other people, right? Like, so if I'm looking from this judgmental position at those closest around me, right? So that's going to be the hardest people, like, because if I'm judging the thoughts, the intentions of somebody around me, like, why wouldn't they do it this way? Why would they do that this way? Or whatever it is, I'm totally missing out on something that's above. For me, like for me, it'll pull me into what I would describe as a negative place. My emotions would be negative. My thought process would be judgmental, negative. It's going to reveal conflict. And then depending on how I navigate and how I have those discussions, how I address those things, can really create a fairly negative experience in my life. And I have experience in that. But it's layered, right? Because that's on a humanly level playing field. If I'm proud and I'm looking down at people, I'm not seeing what's greater, what's better. How can we get to a higher level from a business standpoint, or family, or relationship, or church organization? If we're just like focused on like, you're not doing this one's not doing this. And there's a time for that. There's definitely a time for reflection, what can be better, improvement. But the secondary layer is from a relationship with God that chimes in. And I would assume, I can't assume, I don't know C.S. Lewis, but I would assume it's something spiritually if that is the case. But that's the beauty of writing. That's the beauty of just this world. There's always so many layers of the things that we're doing that are impacting those around us, impacting us internally, impacting us externally and eternally. So the eternal view of this is that if I'm proud and I'm always looking down. If I'm like, yes, I'm the best roofer, I'm awesome at this, I'm the best salesperson, I'm the best father, I that it can't even like come out of my mouth without major like conflict inside. But if I'm prideful in these things and I'm looking down at my accomplishments, I'm not seeing what's above. Now, I don't mean like, oh, there's a sky and the moon. I mean, on a higher plane of an existence, in a spiritual sense, that there's more than this. So I'm prideful. I'm looking at what I want, what I'm doing, how it's working out, what I've accomplished in this world, the looking down portion, and I'm missing what's after this physical life, which is eternity. And from my view, from a biblical worldview, there's either separation from God or living in eternal existence and peace and joy and all things positive in the presence of God. So what a horrible thing to always be proudful, looking down and not seeing what is above or what is out in the future. So that is some of the thoughts that come up when you read that, that quote. And it's very impactful for me, right? My son is in a Bible study and Monday night, asking him like, hey, how'd this go? What did you guys talk about? And he's explained like real short that, a couple Bible verses, they talked about where does sin come from, right? Sin comes from the desires of our heart, the lust of the eyes, and the lust of the flesh. So basically the things that we see in this world, the glitter, the glitz, the glamour, the nice things, it doesn't even have to be, it could be a new house, a new car, whatever these things are, the lust that we have, the desires that we have for them. And then the fleshly, right? The things that we want, comfort, security, good feelings, food, sexual things. I think generally in our culture, we think of lust, we think of sex. And that's true. That is an aspect of it. And he also talked about where does the temptation come from? And it comes from the world. It comes from spiritual forces as well that are impacting us. And that's impactful for me because it lines up with this, right? Like if you're just looking down, if you're just looking at yourself, you're just trying to take care of the sinful desires that we have, we're going to miss out on what's above. So I'll digress on there. So that it's a great quote. What comes to mind for you why did you pick that quote for today? What comes to mind for you in that C.S. Lewis quote?
Thank you for asking that. You're ready to have your show, by the way. That's a intentional question. Exactly what happened. I think the audience, what you just said, will be helpful based on my personal interactions with you over time. So that's what went through. And there's a lot of, plenty of quotes, but that was the first one that popped out. I said, this is a good place to start. I want to ask this question selfishly for the audience, which is really for me, if I'm honest with myself as well. Where were you, or was there a time, and if there was a time, where were you and what was going through your mind and your body and your life where you were not looking up, maybe even if you thought you were, or no, maybe like you were completely aware that you were not looking up? Because I'm thinking there's people listening to this that we may have already lost them, but maybe one's still holding on. That's like, all right, I'm going to give it a few more minutes to see if this could help me in my business or like my actual life. I don't want to just believe in random things. That could be where you potentially were at one point in your life, Robert, where you may not have been looking up. And like what was going through your mind. And then you decided to look up. And now you're who you are today, which I would argue, hey, don't tune out. Don't stop listening to this episode. Because Robert's great. He's like, really is this person that believes in that believes what he's talking about. So my question to you is, well, for my answer is I picked a quote because exactly what I was hoping would happen, where you would share your thoughts that helped me, and I think they'll help the audience, regardless of where they're at in their journey of life. And my question is, was there a time where you weren't looking up, right? So a proud man is always looking down on things and people. And of course, as long as you're looking down, you cannot see something that is above you. So was there a time where you would have tuned out of this episode already? And if so, what was going on? And then if that was the case, how did you, like, I'd like to understand all that.
So
whatever you're comfortable sharing.
So and coming into this, I feel like the mindset is to be open, right? To be comfortable and share, be uncomfortable in sharing if that's the case. So it's when you ask the question a few times, you just ask it, was there a time in your life when you were looking down, you were proud, and you feel like you were missing what was above, and what was the catalyst to change? So, and that could be impactful. So for me, if I take an honest look at my life in the rear view in light of that question, the majority of the time that I've lived is spent looking down. And that's a tough thing to say now. And there may be judgment like, oh, he's such a prideful person. There's levels or whatever you would say. Like there's so there's a level. Like sometimes I could be totally distracted, prideful, frustrated, angry, and really in a high level of pride and depth of negativity from my perspective. Not trusting God, not having faith, not looking above, versus there may be a scale to get there. There may be some poor actions that get me there. So starting off from that concept, like, hey, most of my life I'm proud and looking down. The things, the catalyst for change can be so many things, right? But I do, my heart, my belief is that the initial catalyst for change actually comes from God. So I believe that God, through his Holy Spirit, is orchestrating the external things, knowing what I'm going to do, allowing me to do these things, and then utilizing even the things that I do to create conviction and awareness inside of me. That is then that is the catalyst for thoughts. The feelings and thoughts come together and it creates a change. So some of those scenarios that I would say, to try to break it down to a physical, a monumental items, when I was younger, it's part of my testimony as a believer and a faithful man in Jesus Christ is I was doing a lot of bad stuff, right? Like teenage years. So to circle that back, I felt very insecure, right? And I realize this is not an individual story. There's a lot of people that when they were younger, they didn't feel like they fit in. They always felt different. They were insecure. It's like this something in my brain that was like always questioning or feeling like people were looking at me and maybe they were, right? Like, so that's the thing, like that stuff does go on. And then that insecurity, when I was introduced to drugs and alcohol, it definitely seemed to like quiet that, and different combinations of things and the different people, it started to like bring that down, slow that, make me more comfortable, less inhibited, more outgoing and just more comfortable. But it wasn't real, meaning each of the actions that I was doing, whether it was just doing illegal things, hiding the drugs and alcohol, then stealing or hurtful things, hanging out with people that then were kind of mean. I was hanging out with people that weren't very nice and weren't loving and caring, like some of the people in my family that I had grown up with, but accepting these negative behaviors because I wanted the end reason, the end. So I would accept the means because of the end would be, but it stopped working, right? Like, so it was more uncomfortableness, more law challenge, more in trouble by parents, more, things. But the real catalyst in the ending of like there was a pinnacle point in my teenage years, late teens, where I had some people very close to me pass away. I was really using heavily, and something in my brain like it snapped, right? And it went to like this awareness of how bad I was doing. Actually, I was listening to a lot of rap music, like real violent, hardcore things that were, you talk about pride, like the crux of pride, right? Like steal it was just even when I listen to it today, it can fill me up with pride. So
Wow.
at that time, that external thing, which was internal as well, that prompting was like, you got to change. Like there was fear in my heart that I'm going to be separated from God. I had a background of going to Catholic school and, a little bit of till sixth grade and going to church here and there. But I believe that he reached down and shook me up. Again, it's part of
Wow.
the testimony of, the Amazing Grace song. Basically, it says Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound that taught my heart to fear, and how amazing grace my fears relieved. So there was fear. There was fear and caution, and I reached out and I did stop. So I made changes. I stopped using drugs, alcohol, cigarettes, everything. Now I was definitely, I wasn't in my right mind because of all the drugs and alcohol, not sleeping. I was doing like heavy stuff, and but there was a change. I started to go to meetings. I like 12-step NA meetings, which I had been introduced to since I was 14 years old. There was all kinds of these external catalysts that build up. But that was a heavy duty moment for me. Like, whoa, I got to change. And, God utilized that. I read the Bible a lot. I wasn't fitting in anywhere at that point. And so those things were big catalysts. Later on in life, I didn't stay clean the whole time. That's not my story. But so around like 25, I got clean again. And you have these external things that are not going right. There's an internal conviction that's like, oh, like this is not the right way to go, and a change. Then I started working a lot, right? Like I started getting married, have kids, working a lot. And there was another big catalyst for change where, like you said, the question is there a time when you were looking down, not aware, and realized, and what was that changing? So another big catalyst was when we started working together, right? We're going back years now, 2018. So that's 4 years approximately. And, I really thought at that time, like, all right, I'm living an honest life. I'm straightforward. I'm doing everything virtually with virtue and in alignment with my beliefs. And I was unaware. That was the kicker, right? Like that one was such a big deal because of my unawareness of how I was talking, how I was acting, the things that I was doing were not in alignment with what I actually thought that I was doing. And when the mirror was held up so I could I can look at myself, it's shaken me a bit where it's like, I'm not even comfortable at all to say like, yeah, I know what's going on. I'm doing this or doing that from a virtuous way. Now, it doesn't mean I'm totally insecure in that matter. It means that I just need to stay open to view what things are that are going on. So that was another big external, internal catalyst for this change to continue to look above. Now, these are huge items. This is such a cycle for me over and over and over again that I can't even, it's every day, multiple times a day. And then there's like middle of the road type of awarenesses. And I am so thankful because some of these awarenesses that I've had over the last decade were like, it was just inside, like God was like hitting me, like, and I would hear it outside. People will say it, and I would agree, like, make sure you spend time with your kids. Make sure you make this as a priority. It's going to go away. And I would hear it and I would say like, yes, I'm going to do this. Yes, I am doing this. Yes, I do this. But there was continually rising up this, like, even if it was 4 times a year or something like this internal conviction, like guilt, it would hit me like, oh my gosh, like I'm doing this again. I'm getting sucked into doing projects at my house. I'm getting sucked into working in the business. I'm getting sucked into sales. I'm getting sucked into There's so many different things. They're all great things, but when I use them to the extent that I do, they can actually have negative consequences. So and I'm unaware, like I'm unaware as it's happening. And then there's very small things, little things just throughout the day that catalyst me to change because I'm having that same thought pattern, emotion. I am distracted from trusting in God and seeing what's above, and I'm focused on my own wants, desires, what I think is right. And I joke about that, like, because I'm not wrong. What I think is right until somebody shows me differently, right? Like, so but I am open. I'm much more open-minded to it. I'm aware now, and I'm so thankful for you for the credit. I'm aware of this like anxious feeling inside. I'm aware of which in the past I would try to like push it away and navigate the problem. But a lot of times the anxious feeling is like it's a smoke alarm to say like, whoa, something's not right. We might need to address this conflict. Might need to, for me to look at it like, do you need to handle this? Are you being selfish? Are you being open-minded? Are you willing to have an open discussion with somebody about this? Does it need that, right? Is it a priority now, later, or never? And these promptings are what is the most meaningful things in my life, right? Because when I'm prompted to look at the Lord and look at eternity, man, the weight of everything in this world is so little. Like and that still doesn't mean I'm not responsible, but the heaviness, the clouded mind, the full mind, the inability to focus on what's going on today, to miss out on the blessings that I have of a father, to be a father, to have children, to be a son, to have family, to have friends like you and talk about things in the moment, to lead a business, to help impact the community, to help share the gospel. Like when I'm missing out on those things because of my own pride, my own selfishness, my own desires for what I want, and I'm not being faithful to God, I'm the one that suffers. Really, at the end of the day, I'm the one, and that usually creates some havoc around me. So, the times that come up, there's the big items. There's like the internal prompting. That's where I think it comes from, is God trying to call me back to, and we just talked about this last night in our Young Bucks, which is like a Bucks County Community Church, like part where I'm a leadership with young men from junior and senior high, is that God calls us to live an honorable life, a life of humility, putting others before us. And I'm like sharing with the kids, like, that's a challenge for me. I like the best seats. I like being catered to. I like good meals. I like being treated this way. Like, I like things of the world. I like all this stuff. Like, so that's really a challenge, to put others' needs before mine. Now, I don't beat myself up, meaning I do that as well. I live an honorable life, and there's some type of balance, right? Like that's a word that my wife has been introducing to my life for, all of the years, but I've heard it a lot more in the last 2. I've heard it, and I think I understand some more of the meaning of what balance.
Why do you think the business owners listening to this would benefit from thinking about or embracing a potential to believe in or challenge their beliefs around the eternal?
Well, first and foremost, if they're not aware of it and they have no belief in the eternal, and they're not they're not in faith with, they're not in a relationship with Jesus Christ as their savior for the sin that they do and have committed and will commit, their eternity is at stake. So that's number one. So for them to have a consideration, if somebody's listening to this, business owner or not, and you're not in a right relationship, and you're not, confessing, like if you haven't confessed that you're a sinner and that you need Jesus as your savior to be in a relationship with God, the challenge that I have for that person is, you can definitely reach out to me. I will gladly explain what that means and some context so you can make a decision. But so that's number one. It's impactful because yes, this world can be great. It can be 100 years of the best stuff and awesomeness. but 100 years in comparison to eternity, to me, it's not even fathom in our minds. We can't even fathom what that means. So first and foremost, that's the most important thing in this whole creation experience, life, because, so that's number one. Number two, for those that are already a believer in Christ, in Jesus, and they have faith in God, and they have a biblical worldview, just to try to hit them to say like, hey, wait, take a look at this, right? Like maybe, and I don't know, I can't judge them, but for me, I really thought like, yeah, I'm doing it. I'm living it. I'm living out my virtue, my beliefs, but I wasn't, and not entirely, right? Like there was areas that I wasn't, I should say. And it's such a shift, a paradigm shift to realize like, crap, I thought I was, but I wasn't. So here's a new level of awareness. So it shakes my comfort in that. So for that sake, for their own sake, in their relationship with God, that they would reconsider. For those that aren't faithful or are faithful and are in a role of an entrepreneur, you're a leader in business. And even if you're the owner or manager, whatever it is that you're leading, one way or the other, even as the what would be considered potentially an entry level position, because everybody's very important, right? Like everybody's important to an organization. Without certain people, it would not function the way that it does. So viewing the way that we live our life through faith, viewing the way that we act at work through faith, viewing the way that we interact with those around us is going to impact everything, right? Like, so it's going to affect the leader that's, let's just talk you. So the question is, how would this impact through an entrepreneur through faith? I am not wholly and totally responsible for the success of Guardian Roofing and Siding. I'm, a very close friend, financial advisor. He says, I'm a managing partner, right? He's a Christian brother. He's like, in his business, I'm not the owner. I'm the managing partner. So if I understand, right, and I am looking up, and I realize that every client that comes, every employee, every staff, every relationship, it is knitted together by a loving, caring creator God. And this is my role here, is to navigate this and trust in him. It relieves a burden. And it doesn't, not in an irresponsible way, like, well, it's God's, plan. I am responsible as well. I do this, like putting my hands together, like it's a partnership, right? Like I need to show up, because if I'm over here and I'm being lazy, I'm lying, I am manipulating, I'm telling some people some truths and other people other truths. So, because I'm protecting the conflict, that was a big problem of mine, that I was not, I knew it was uncomfortable, but I was a little unclear. That was one of the biggest things that you helped me out with, is that I would tell some people some stuff, but I didn't want the others to know, because I didn't want them, because I was ultimately in charge. I didn't want them to think I'm a weak leader, and I wanted to keep them happy. I was like, for lack of better words, like playing God in the business and trying to navigate that. But really, what was revealed is that both parties are seeing me, as well as the spectators around are seeing me act inauthentically with my values. So for the entrepreneur, when you think about navigating through your business in faith, and for clarity, I'm not saying like I'm perfect. This is a practice, right? And it's been a very uncomfortable practice in the moment, but the freedom that it's giving me over the last few years is unfathomable. Like I couldn't even, I was so anxious all the time, always having to solve this problem, do this thing. So not that I don't still have to solve problems and do things, but I've eliminated a lot of the anxiety because I just handle the conflict directly. With trusting in God that he's in charge and acting in the right way and leaving the end results up to God, it's taken a lot of weight off of my shoulders. I believe that the relationships between me and the people in the company are much better off for it, especially the ones that were closest to me. I believe that the relationships with those around me in other areas of leadership, in my family, with my wife, we're getting better and closer because I'm open to hear what she says about things with the business where I may have been so defensive and reactive in anything going on. And I would probably, not probably, I would dump like, oh, this happened, that happened, this happened. She would give some feedback and I would be closed off to it. Like, so acting these actions out through faith, through the business, putting it in the right priority, because when I'm prideful, when I want money, I want the security of money. It doesn't even feel like I like touch money as much anymore. It's the things that money represents, right? A nice house, nice, secure cars, secure food, secure retirement. It's security. It's a sense of security that I long for. And there's responsibility in having these things taken out. There's responsibility in preparing for these things, your house, your transportation, and doing those, it's responsible. But when it comes to a level where, for me, it's been in the past where I'm going all out and I don't even recognize it. Like, I will just go and go and go in sales, or I will push and push and push for something that I think is challenging my security. And that in the past, like I talking to one person in the industry, in my organization, about one part of something and talking to somebody else about something else. I was insecure. I didn't want to lose the relationship with either of them. They were both very important. And generally it came down to sales and ops, right? Like that was the thing. And I'm like playing both sides in the past, playing both sides of the fence, but they were both seeing what's going on and it was actually building resentment, separation. So that was the thing that's like, so it's opposite of what you expect. It's opposite of what I expected. I wasn't aware what I was actually doing was separating everybody. I was not being authentic with any of the parties to the fullest that I could have been. And then they were not feeling trust back towards me. And the end result is now, over the last few years, I've been working at it, working through these things, working to rebuild these relationships. It's uncomfortable because the people that I've attracted during this time that are together are used to me in the past. So it's been a long time of my change, which isn't always perfect. That's the problem. And I could do great for months, weeks, days, and then one slip up of a bad that I'm aware of that's, like falling into old patterns, I can damage that trust again, like knock down the house of cards and need to rebuild that. So that being said, I think it's so impactful. And I could probably go into many more areas where faith is going to impact the entrepreneur in the way that they think, they act, they trust the employees, trust for provision, trust to be, to give to the clients in different, I have my business and our model. So I'm equating that with these things, but this is for any entrepreneur, the services that they provide, the clients that they interact with, the staff of the company, whether it's ops, sales, manufacturing, whatever, there's relationships that are going on. And the other very impactful part is we're leaders, right? So if you're a Christian, you're a claiming Christian entrepreneur, but you're not influencing your business, the people around you, the customers that use what you have, I would question, do you believe the things that you say you believe? Right? Like, and that's a question that's posed to me pretty often because my pastor says it. If we believe the things that we say we believe, why do we do the things we do? So what's the priority here, right? Like, so, because it's scary, right? You start talking about spirituality, religion, and things like that, especially in today's environment, or pray before a meeting, after meeting, before meals, things like that. There's a level of concern because you don't want somebody to be uncomfortable. So I'll digress with that. I think that there is freedom of all of the pressure, doesn't release responsibility because we have to navigate through this physical world in alignment with our spirituality and our flesh and what we do. It will allow more honest relationships with those around you. You'll be able to trust more, to be open. And I believe you could potentially impact, you have a high probability of impacting someone else's eternity through the way you live. It's not always saying, do you believe in Christ and you have to do this it's through, we're called as believers, for those that are faithful, to live as ambassadors of light in this dark world. So, and we stick out, the Bible says, nobody lights a lamp to put it under a basket or put it under bed. If it's on the city for all to be seen. So we're called, as a faithful person, to be out there and live in this way. And it's hard as, the leader to humble yourself and put others first, when we think this is where the real challenge comes in, is because we have some good ideas. We have great ideas. That's why we are where we are. But other people also have ideas and perspectives that they can bring. And when we can listen to that and have an honest conflict and say, thank you, I'm not going to do that, but I appreciate your thing. You actually have this model where you don't become alone at the top. You actually have people that you've worked together, you've listened to them. I literally, and I'll digress, I'll tell this small little story through relationships building with people on staff at Guardian. And one in particular, yesterday, we had a conflict on something, and he was saying, oh, I think it's this way. And I was like, well, I think it's this way. And I'm trying my best to say, like, stay calm and not be forceful and be a brute in it, and say, well, I would really like to understand why you see it that way. I wasn't swayed by the reaction that I got or the explanation. It was bland but it was still honest. It was an honest opinion from my counterpart. And it was just not sitting great. But I have a lot going on. So I was like, I'm going to let this go right now and keep moving. And then this morning I woke up, I'm like, I know why I have such a hard time with this. Because of the way it was handled. There was a decision that was made, I give a directive, a decision was made in opposition to it, but then I had to re-question this morning, was it real clear, the directive that I gave? Was it clear? And then my counterpart did something different, and then only after I just, hey, why are you doing this like this? Then he revealed, oh yeah, because of this and this. And I don't understand that. Why is this? Right? It's an important thing. So I had an opportunity to speak with my wife about it. This is what's going on, and I don't feel comfortable with it. What do you think about this? Is this, and it came down, just to get for clarity, it was an ethical, moral discussion. And my counterpart was saying, I don't think if we do this, his actual words were, I think it's a lie of omission. So I'm like, dang, that's a big deal for me. But I didn't agree. I still didn't agree. So processed it, took some time, spoke with my wife about it. Without using his words, I just explained my perspective and situation. And she said, well, it doesn't, she's like, I'm not really sure, but it doesn't sound like it's all the way honest. Kind of like you're keeping something from someone. So now I'm like, crap, right? Because I don't see it like that. And I hear two people that are very close to me saying, oh, this is now the conflict inside of me that I was feeling, that I woke up with, dang, that thing was woof, right away. Now I'm like, all right, well, maybe I'm not viewing this properly. Maybe I am missing something based off of what I've been saying this whole time, is that I was so unaware for a time that now I can't act as if I'm so aware, because I'm only looking down. I have to look up. I have to consider what those around me are telling me. So that's the exact example of the quote that you read, to listen to those that are there. It just happened yesterday into this morning, right before getting into here. And three variables. One, was I very clear to say, this is it, and this is what we're doing? I don't think that I was, because it was in a meeting stance. We didn't circle back to it. So there's some openness. There's some room for consideration. I need to listen now to the other people around me that are saying something that is maybe not fully, there may be an omission, which I was totally comfortable with. I have to look at that and evaluate that. So hearing it like that, okay, I get it. There's probably something there, because there's a rising up inside of me of insecurity prior. That's what's triggering me to have this omission. And So that releases a little bit of the conflict that I needed to have with my counterpart from work to say like, hey, I don't like how this went and this wasn't good. And I needed to get to that conflict. It also revealed that, okay, even if my counterpart at work is right, or they're right, it's their feelings, it's their view. So it is, to say it's right or wrong is not the right way to describe that. To value their perspective from where they are and to value my wife's perspective and take that into consideration. Now the conflict of which way do we do this or not, that's clear. Like I'm okay with, all right, yes, I will concede. Like, let's do it this way. Let's reveal this as we do. But I also have to have a conflict now, because the conflict is that there was an intentional action that went on with my counterpart that he did not bring it to me and just chose to go a different direction. Now that does weigh in a little bit on the part of, was I clear in the directive? So we have to talk about that. I want to ask, like, were you aware when you were making these decisions that you were going against it, something that I wanted? And did you have an awareness to come to me and talk to me about these things? And I'm challenged with that, right? Because I don't even know how to do that yet. Very great. Because I know that when I ask a certain question, it can be coming off like a bully. Like, were you aware of this? Did you know what you did? And I'm positioning my counterpart to be defensive, especially in how I've been in my past. So the navigation of the conflict is very important for me, because it's the way that I handle it. It can affect the outcome and what continues to go on. So I'm still working through that right this minute. And I got to work on that. I have to have that discussion today, but that is how faith in business and the quotes that you're talking about actually play out in real life for me as a leader.
What are the short-term benefits of someone listening to saying, well, I disagree, so I'm just going to lie and omit and just work really, really hard. And like, if you were to play devil's advocate, what are the benefits of lying more in work, lying, cheating, belittling people that work for you that make mistakes? Like, so people make mistakes, people let you down, you own a business, you have expectations of where you want it to go, you have a lifestyle. So what are some of the benefits? I'm serious about this. Let's play devil's advocate to the best of our ability of lying, holding things back, more not taking so much interest in what those that are serving you have to say. Are there benefits in the short or long term? So does it matter that much? Because if, let's say, like, so I don't, whether I'm someone listening to this or I'm myself, I have an opinion that whether it's true or not, that there are people that are farther along in business than myself and you that have multiple partners, intimately, lie like intentionally to their competition. Let's use that even, because that's kind of a distant, easy one, but that can't be so bad, right? What are your thoughts on that? Can we unpack that a little bit philosophically, if anything? So
sure. I
like, what are the benefits of lying and cheating and stealing and not really listening to the employees? How about firing somebody very quickly that seems stupid? Or really just unlikable, like, just because I'm thinking, what do you think?
All right. So you just said a lot. You asked a lot of things, but I'm gonna take. I was gonna tell you a couple notes I take, and we'll break it down. So, what are the short-term benefits to? And you just said it here: lying, cheating, stealing, not listening, firing somebody quick because they're stupid, because they're stupid or unlikable. The short-term benefits that I wrote down prior to you listing it out like that is that there's no conflict, right? You get what you want. You can keep a team together somewhat. You're in charge of your future and you have control. So you get more of what you want, right? Generally, that's short term. So to break that down, no conflict. That I believe, unawarely, with me being unaware of it, I believe that was my motivation. I really thought that I was doing the things that I needed to do to hold the business together. Because without me being a navigator of conflict, that's the freaking whole ironic part, is that I thought I was so great at navigating, great listener, great this communicator, bringing people together, and I was. There was elements of that were used that were awesome. It's not like it just changed. So it's part of me that's there, but there was this other part that didn't want to have certain conflicts. So the short-term benefit is that you don't have to have the conflict. Like if you just lie, right? You just lie and just handle it. You don't have to have that conflict. Externally, it's never worked out that way for me. Thank God. Like, again, I say that I believe that God works and weaves all these things together to convict me, to draw me closer to him, to trust and rely and recognize and honor him. So seems like my lies always fell apart, right? And I'm a pretty good liar, meaning somehow or some way these things, and sometimes it was so blatant, like I would tell somebody like, don't say anything, blah, blah, blah. Within 5 minutes, like, oh yeah, so-and-so said this, right? Like, I'm like, dude, didn't you get it? I just said, don't say this. I'm doing this for you. That is like the deception. Like, I don't want your relationship to be messed up. Like, so, you do it like this. And like, even as I think of that word track, like, I believe that. It's just so hard, right? Like, it's so hard that
I feel compelled to say the obvious. Like, this just might be the realest conversation I've yet had on the show. I just had a whole lot of realization. I mean, just thank you for agreeing to do this, because I can't imagine anyone listening to this that hasn't been in this position, because then it brings me back to what I've learned just being around you is like, well, duh, because, right? I mean, we're not perfect. That in itself is a contradicting train of thought. So can you elaborate a little bit on the consequences of so I'll just, because I wrote this quote down: if you just lie, you don't have to have the conflict.
But I can't end there, right? I have to interrupt you, because if you ended there, but you do have the conflict. The conflict it's like a ball of energy inside of you. It's a shroud of guilt when you go around that person. For me, right? And again, thank God. Maybe there are, hey, for the business entrepreneur, that you have no guilt and nothing wrong. Keep on doing what you're doing, because you're going to do a great job. But who knows what, I'm joking around, right? Like a commercial for someone that doesn't have this conviction. And I don't believe it. I don't believe it for a second. I don't, right? So that's a joke. I don't believe that it's possible for humans. Now, maybe I'm closed-minded on this, but I don't believe it's possible for us to go that route and not have these feelings. But we can manage it. We can use drugs, alcohol, sex, things, shopping, money, pride. I could probably go on to just continue to cover up that feeling. Don't even talk about it anymore. Bury it and put it away. Like, so if you think that you're okay with what you're doing, I would challenge you. Somebody asked me one time when I got together, when's the last time you spent an hour and just had quiet time, right? Like, so for me, that was you, just by the way, Jay. But for me, I was like, never, right? Like, I just keep moving. And I found that is a consequence of avoidance of conflict, and, is more movement, because I'm just uncomfortable. I got to fix it. And it was, so anyway, I'll digress. So I don't believe, we said short term. So the short term is that you get to avoid the conflict. Did you want to ask another question? Because I will go into it, because there's other short term, very useful.
What are you thinking?
Benefits of that action. So like I said, you get to keep the team together. So again, short term, You avoid the conflict, neither are aware. In that scenario, you lie, cheat, steal, you paint a picture of yourself that's different, they feel comfortable to be with you, or whatever the scenario is. You keep money if you're stealing, right? If you're a lie, whatever these things are. But they're short term. Like the team, I believe, will break. The money will go away. Now, I believe that from a biblical standpoint, like literally it says that if you do something, you will pay 7 times, right? Like not karma, it's not what it is, right? But from a biblical standpoint, there are consequences to our actions. So I believe that you will not, so you get to keep the team together, you are in charge, you get to feel like you're the boss. And you don't have to listen to other people. Again, that links in with pride, but that is a short-term effect. You get what you think is best because you did it. You made it happen, whether through lie, cheat, steal, manipulation, whatever, you get to get it. So you can own the outcome. That's a short-term. Again, that one can be broken down of the downside of that as well. So there are short-term, there are short-term positives that could be viewed from that. Like, and that's with anything, right? You could say shooting heroin, right? Like ingesting heroin, like nobody could say that's a good thing, but there is a short-term satisfaction. Amazing, right? That comes in, but most people in their right mind would say, yeah, but the drawbacks are a little dangerous, right? A little bit challenging. So does that answer the question?
Wow, so much more springs up. I mean, I've got a list here. The short-term benefits of lying, cheating, stealing, alienating people. You get to keep the team together because I'm adding those that were agreed were bad are now motivation for the team to realign. Essentially, you get to keep the team together. You get money. You get to keep the money. You're in charge. You get to feel like the boss. And I wrote, of course, you have control. So my first thought in listening to this, if I think about the whole conversation so far, in the beginning, there was a case made for the eternal, and now there's a case made for this. And my intuition says that this is kind of sexy. This is sexier. This is good. Like, this is helpful. And it's like, my curiosity is like talking to you is like, dang, what does that mean? Like, what are the consequences of that? And where does your mind go? It's like, if I take this segment of the conversation, of this podcast into 2 pieces, God, it reminds me of like this book that I've been trying to read for so many years, and I keep putting it down because it's so intense. I'm not ready, I guess. Not the Bible, because that's one too. Thank you. You don't even have to say anything for that. It's around here somewhere, either or, where the first half of the book is Kierkegaard outlining the life of the aesthete, essentially this, hey, these are the benefits of lying. And then the second half of the book is the religious, and I'm oversimplifying. It's a complex book with a lot more nuance than what I'm saying. He talks more into, there's 3 stages, but anyway, it was the aesthete, the ethical, and the religious. So for anyone interested, go buy the book. But and tell me how it goes, because I haven't finished it yet. Robert, what are your thoughts of because I don't really have a question. I kind of have an epiphany. It's like, I really wanted to know what the short-term benefits of doing the opposite of what you were saying, because I'm curious at what you were thinking. And now you've outlined this really strong case that I think people can take away from this episode, that, if they lie, if they fire people that they feel are ugly, they're going to make money and get success. So I'm like, gosh, then that makes me think that's a sexy argument. Like, why should anyone not do that if they don't believe in any of the things that you said at the beginning, which sound hyperbolic and unprovable to the rational mind? There's a level of pride. Like, I don't want to believe everything you said at the beginning of this episode because I don't know, and that's uncomfortable to think about. And now you're telling me or you're making a pretty rational case that, I might be able to do all that stuff that, yeah, maybe it could be perceived as bad, but I can potentially get away with it. Because not even if everybody gets away with it. Some maybe don't really care if they hurt people. And you're just one that does, and like, you're going to lose this game. And now I'm thinking, like, I'm going to lose this game of life, right? I'm not really going to get the real fruit of life. I'm not going to get enough of the adventure because I'm not sinning or doing what other people consider sinful acts, which I could just call experience because I'm the end of it itself. I am, period. That's it. I am. That's it. That's the end of the book. Like, I see this in our culture, and I feel this battle, like this pressing on my back, to like conform to it. I'm surrounded by people that they are telling me every time I have them on the show, even without fully being aware of it, that they are, period. And our listeners are listening to the same thing I'm listening to. And I want to be clear to everyone here. I'm not a believer in the sense of a believer. I don't know what, I'm trying to figure that out. So I'm not making a stake and claim, as Robert has eloquently, for things he believes in, clearly. I just feel a lot of pressure. Meaning, I feel this pressure to conform to the I am. I'm an end in itself, right? Like, I am whatever I want, I can do whenever I want to do it, and I'm going to be rewarded with success. That's what everyone's telling me. But now you come along on this show and you're saying, well, you were making a case for the eternal, and okay. And then now you've made a case for control, and that sounds pretty sexy. What if I don't believe you that there's consequences? So I don't have a question right now. I mean, I have other questions that'll come from whatever you say, but that rose up in me. And I want to say that because I think people are thinking this, even if they're not thinking it.
Well, I can, and I'm not saying that you're in proposal of lie, cheat, steal, be the boss, make decisions, get the short. I'm not saying that you are, but like you said, someone could make a case for that. So I'll ask you, when you've lied and you've cheated and you stole, was there any internal consequence for you that you were aware of? Did you feel anything from it?
Well, I never thought I was doing bad thing. Like, I never thought I was doing. I spent a lot of time thinking about the people that I think they feel I've hurt them. And I think that I can easily, if I'm going to talk about myself, I can easily and have hurt people not trying to. Outright, I think there's great gradients of lying for sure. Because outright lying, I'm not much of an outright liar. I think I've always been attracted to liars and been good fodder for them and want to help them. But to answer your question succinctly, because we can unpack some of it, I don't think I'm I don't think I'm capable of getting away with anything. Yeah, it sounds like a robot. I'm capable of getting away with anything. I say I haven't really got all in on the sin yet. That's the thing. I'm trying to be a good person, right? So I'm not. I'm working really hard on avoiding. I mean, that's why culture matters. Like that's what we're trying to do here is do it right, build success right. But I'm not at the top of the mountain, having done, accumulated what Zuckerberg has to say. Hey, this is also, it's possible to do this right. And I also don't know who I'm going to be by the time I get there. What if I can't, I'm going to be honest, and I don't know if I can handle that much power. Like, I can't speak for future Jay. If you're asking me for past Jay, I think I've hurt a lot of people not trying to hurt them. I do not, I'm not a good liar. There's degrees of lying. And I have interest around that, figuring that out. Conflict, right? If I wasn't a victim at one point deeply, I would not have attempted to become a victor and fall into the irony of the victor being a victim creator or a bully. So I'm telling you, and then that brings me to your hypothesis about the everything, the metaphysical claim of the eternal. It's like, damned if you, damned if you don't. You're going to make mistakes constantly, and like, don't put it all on your shoulders. There's got to be more. Like, and that's where the God comes in for meaning, essentially. Now, can you sin, or can you be a walking hypocrite at all times, being a believer conceptually? Well, that seems to be the case no matter what. That's kind of the point. So if I figure out some type of, if I think I figured out some type of a way to avoid the conceptual belief in God based on my good behavior that I get to define, or those that follow me define, now I'm just another version of God on earth, which is an impossible, scary thought. It's like culty now. I want to avoid that, like the plague. Why do I want to avoid that like the plague? Because I'm really trying to be honest. I want honesty more than I want success. But I don't want to have to choose. That sucks. The more, gosh, that's what comes up when you ask that question. It's, I don't believe I've taken enough time in my life to think about those. I mean, and put in this for myself.
Well, let's reel this back in, and because what we're talking about, your question was, well, you didn't say the question. You said, you made a statement that it seems sexy, right? To just do these things and get these end results. So I can only, again, speak from my experience. When I've omitted the truth, when I've lied, when I've cheated, and when I've stole, it doesn't feel good right away. Like I have it, there is an impact on my spirit, on my mental, on my emotional. There is a negative impact for me. So again, I can only surmise from the depths in which I've dealt with people, unless it's just certain people that are around me, that others have a similar scenario. Now, the challenge is that in the form of business, there's so many things that are placed there, like it's business, right? Like these lines, and as well as there is success from the world's view that is accumulated from financial or status or power, that can shroud the feelings, because you actually can become that's your language, right? And that's the language that you're an honest liar. You don't even know, right, that you're doing these things, like me, right? Like you don't know what you're doing. And then from that point, you start to be, how does it go? Like we have like yes men around us until everybody's then resentful and not communicating, and then they break off and start again, start their own, and they have the catalyst. So And the old adage is you bring it up in regards to it's lonely at the top, right? Like it doesn't have to be lonely at the top when you're communicating with all the people that are around you. So my argument to the fact of it's sexy to do that is that, and again, I can't point the finger because I'm an outside view of other people's lives that have been successful, but it seems as if there isn't a lot of relationship longevity in spouses. You mentioned that multiple spouses or multiple partners. There's a lot of turnover within the business. There's a lot of people that get hurt. There's a lot of consumption of goods and things that go on and from my perspective is covering over that negative feeling. That's the justification, the means, that's the end because of the means. The means they're not feeling well.
I want to say something now.
Yeah.
I think the reason my life has meaning today, and I have a level of pride in who I am, is because when I suffered the consequences of the mistakes that I made in my earlier life, I was honest and I repented and I tried to do better. And it was an instantaneous happening. It wasn't a contemplated thing.
I'm going to switch over. I'm going to switch over.
Go ahead.
I'm going to switch over to the phone like we talked.
Oh yeah, we're good.
So you'll have to let me in on that
All right.
one, and I'll have to end
there for a
this one.
second.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, just go right into it.
Yeah, so thank you. So what I heard you say was that basically your past had created this repentance in that concept of change, which is a catalyst for right now. Is that an accurate summarization of what you just said?
What I was caught up with So no, I want to say that something arose through me when I had the reminder from the outside world that I had made a mistake. I told the truth when the moment I was honest, when it mattered, when my life was hanging on a thread, essentially. Now, I don't want to take full accountability for that, because I don't know why I was honest. Like, I just feel I don't like the idea of taking accountability on that, because I could see where it would be not an opportunity to be honest. So it just made what you said made me think back way back. And because to answer your question, I think in my life I've been more of a complicit person in other people's lies, more of the yes man. But of course, obviously today, what type of life do I have? I have a life where I'm able to be a support role to people in power. I'm not the main dog just thinking about myself. It's just who I am. So if anything, I don't want to give the audience any thought that I've never fallen under the designations of what we were talking about, like the lying, the cheating, the stealing. But I think you can lie, cheat, and steal even if you're complicit in other people's lies, cheating, and stealing. So I could think and say, you know what? My life has meaning and value and has worked out where I can feel proud enough to where I've reached out over the years to make amends with people that I believe I've hurt. And I'm in the process, still always looking and doing that. I think it's a symptom of, in the moment of truth, when I had made mistakes, I chose to tell the truth instead of yeah. Now, but I don't want to take credit for all of that. intuitively, because it feels like that would be a lie. And I'm not professing my faith in, like, I'm not, I'm not, but it kind of sounds like I am if I'm just going along the guardrails of what you, or but so that's my testimony there, of being honest, and the value that honesty has had for me in attracting more people that want to care for me and love me and help me and be valuable and valued and value me and valuable. I think they're tied together to a degree in my life, because there are people, because based on what's occurred in my life, there's, and I want to give them grace. Like, maybe they were trying to help me by hurting me. I don't know. What if they're just wrapped up in their own?
I'm shaking my head no, but like, and then I'm getting hit in the bricks. Like, yeah, that's what I just said I did. I'm saying no, they didn't mean that. I'm judging them, but
It's
actually
powerful.
That's exactly what I just told you that I would do. Like, I would tell myself that I'm helping them by keeping this secret. So they could have been doing it. Sorry, I apologize.
Which
for
leads me to want
to
say that I have to forgive my enemies. I have to love my enemies. I mean, that's the value of that adage to me. I'm thinking, well, the only way to forgive my enemies is to love my enemies. What is love? Well, if I have to love my neighbor like I love myself, do I even know how to love myself? And how can I love myself without my enemy? Because my neighbor, it just reflects me, because based on what I already agree with. So I am personally in the process of forgiving my enemies today, and reaching out to people that I think that I'm that person in their story where they're telling someone about me, like you're talking about someone, or I'm talking about somebody that hurt us without using their name. I'm that person. I've got to be that person in someone else's story. And I'd like to not be, if I can, because I have to embrace that pain of maybe what they'll say or how I'll feel if I meet them. And even though the time has passed, I mean, what is time? So yeah, like, what are your thoughts on that from any perspective?
I have
Where
so
you want to
many, right?
start?
But I think I want to do what you did, right? For the listener that's on here and is they're having a tough time dialing in and navigating with Jay, please stick it through, because he's going to have great stuff to say. Because even for me, that was I understand. If I was to this is how I understand what you said, is that you don't want to be the man in that story, because you don't, then you have to, and you feel that's been the impact, is that you have been lied to, and now you need to forgive this person or these people, and you're in the process of forgiving. And the adage of love your enemy as you love yourself, love others as you love yourself. You get to practice that through forgiveness, and that brings up pain for you. So, and that's the actual action, but yet, so anyway, that's kind of, I'm going to digress on that. That's kind of where I was taking with what you were just saying. And I seriously and jokingly, it is a lot to keep up with the narrative as you unpack what you're explaining in regards to your experience with hurting people, your experience with lying, your experience with being lied to, how that's impacted you, how that's a catalyst for your desire for culture matters, to live these things out virtuously in the hopes that you can achieve success as well as be virtuous, and to navigate a world in that concept. So summing up, that would be my summary of what you were saying. But I still think that I'm still back in my mind, I'm still in a discussion. I'm still back at the point, because if the listener is carrying on and they are like, man, this is great, let's lie, cheat, steal, what's this? You get to be the boss, you get to do these things, you get to do all this stuff. because I don't want to miss that opportunity. I don't want to miss the opportunity to say like, whoa, like there is problems internally with that. That mindset is short-term solution minded, and it's not a long-term solution. So that would, and it actually creates the problem in the long term.
Why?
Now, what's that?
Why? What are the, can you elaborate on the non-benefits? So the consequences of the earlier strategy of success in the short term of lying and the control that comes from it and the short-term value of the money. What are the consequences now?
Well, the immediate consequences, like what I just talked about, not being in alignment with yourself, continually to need to cover that feeling with more, controlling or good feeling, creation of a good feeling. So you're not really comfortable. My experience is not really comfortable in your own skin. When you then are, when the realizations occur, these blips of like, I'm not authentic. I'm not being who I could be. I'm going against what I know is right. Now, again, I thank God that I have the conviction that I do through the Holy Spirit, and I can't put that on every other person. I don't know what they go through, but one, like right after the short term is flooding in the negative consequence. So that's negative. Then the relationships are actually hurt with those around you. So your quality of life will decrease based off of your meaning that you find. That's exactly what you said. Like, you have meaning in the work that you do. I'm a student of your concept. I'm a practicer of that concept, and I am a teacher of that concept at this point. That, through work, there's value. Meaning is created as a human in this world, and there's all different concepts of work. And I'm not just saying vocation. There's so many things that there's value found. So that's the opposite of that is that if you're not living virtuously, you're losing value, you're losing meaning, you're losing the opportunity to have what you. So I will bring out one of the statements that you said, like, man, why not live this way and enjoy the fruits of life and all the consumption and all the things? My challenge is what is the fruit, right? The things, the stuff, or is it internal? Or is it the layered of it is that you can have the external, which are the things. You can have an internal comfort about enjoying the things because you know how they were procured, how you got them, the people that you did it with, and you get to enjoy it with them, as well as your then external or eternal view of the things that are now as they're gifts that you can enjoy without guilt, right? Like, again, very close friend of mine, financial advisor, go on mission trips and all this. His company's name is 1022, and I don't have the exact quote, but it's Proverbs 10 verse 22, and it's something along like a godly man has has things without guilt, without any weight, right? Like, so you can biblically have things and stuff, right, and without the weight of those things and without the burden or guilt of the acquirement of them. So long term, that's a problem. If you can't enjoy your stuff and you're filling yourself with drugs, alcohol, sex, more stuff, what is it all worth? Where's the real adventure? And that's the other part that you said, like, adventure. So to me, what's really the adventure? Your selfish, self-consumed desire to lead and push through that's unauthentic to what you believe is right and wrong. And then you have these things, or so from my perspective, the adventure really comes from doing the right thing, right? That's a challenge. That's the one that's like, oh, so uncomfortable. Overcoming these small little things on a daily, or we talk about these bigger items that come up, every so often, or these few monumental triggers where I had a chance to make a decision, right? The biblical terms of it, I had a chance to repent. So the repentance is your thoughts, your heart. It's a heart. It's an emotion. It's a thought, and then it's action, right? Or word that changes. We talk about the drug addictive young man. Like, I repented. I had the feeling, the thought. I made the change and changed my life. I had, the timing in a later young man. And then as a working man and working and building, like, whoa, I had a feeling of conviction, a thought, and a pivot, a change of direction. So all these things combined equal meaning for me. And I'm passionate about, because you struck the nerve, like, why wouldn't someone do this? Like, I want to fight about that. Like, no, like it's empty. What is it? And from somebody that's acquired things, stuff, finances, family, business, it can flip on a dime. Like, if I'm insecure, I'm going back to your first thing, I'm proud, I'm looking down, I'm having all of my security from the wealth of the world or the things it's fragile. And generally I get shook, and then I'm like negative and controlling and wanting to lie. Like, but when I repent, right, and recognize, like, God, you are in charge, you are this is all from and through, and to glorify you, I have such a relief. I have such a much better experience in life. So, but to dial that back, the long-term problems with you, we say, oh, you're the boss, you get to make the decision. But great, you get to be the boss by yourself. Nobody wants to communicate with you. You don't listen to anybody else. They don't even want. That's my story, right? Like, the way that I interacted with people, they didn't want to come to me. I'm a freaking nut. Like, I will, like, shut them down. I won't say violently in a sense of physicalness, but I'm, bullyish in my word. Like, no, that doesn't make any sense. It's an example, right? That doesn't make any sense. This is why, and this is what it is. And really, that's not a conversation. That's actually just beating somebody over the head with my view, so they don't even feel comfortable to bring their counter offer or whatever, their other position back, because they don't feel like they're going to be heard, listened to, and considered. What a different environment to be able to peacefully say, like, oh, tell me more. Why do you think that? Understand what it is, where they're coming from. Honestly tell them, because through this practice of being honest, that's easier to say, like, oh, tell me more. Da, 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 da. It's harder to then share my view, right? To say, well, this is why I think this, because for some reason inside of me, that's a hard thing to say. I don't know why. There's like something built in me. So you don't get to be the boss long term. You lose, actually, the thing that you think you're getting is like, oh, you're doing well and you'd be respected. You're actually losing that relationship with those around you when you don't listen. You lie, cheat, steal, fire the people that are ugly. I'm going back to your list of the things that you said. And the biggest one is like, what is it all worth, right? Like, listen, and this is to the entrepreneur, if you're loving it, you're gaining, you're creating, you're lying, cheating, stealing, it's winning, it feels good. I don't know what to tell you. Maybe we're different, because for me, there was something in there there was some level of awareness at certain times that was not good. And I listened to it, and then it created value. For you, I don't know what to tell you, right? Consider it, take quiet time, think about it, pray about it. But for those that have any, self-conscious, any subconscious or conscience that's pricking them a little bit, I encourage you to listen and slow down, because like I was saying, and I didn't really expand on it. I feel like I've amassed, if I could say, like, I could look at this two ways, the perfect house, wife, children, land, business, like, God has given it all to me so perfectly. But when I'm navigating it in a selfish, lying, cheating, stealing way, I do not get to enjoy any of it. It feels empty. I want more. It doesn't seem to suffice. I'm fearful I'm going to lose it. So that's my experience. It's not all about getting stuff. Now, I do like stuff. Like, I've said this multiple times in this meeting, like, I like the stuff. I'm not subscribing right now. And again, just like you say, I don't know what future Bob is going to have, but I'm not subscribing right now to, like, I can't have stuff, or stuff is evil, or, and biblically it says the love of money is the root of all evil. The money's not evil, right? The money's a tool. The things are gifts. They're good. It's the love of these things that is the root of all types of evil. So that being said, the caution is that as you grow, as you build, as you do these things, if you're able to listen to your conscience, be honest, open-minded, that's a great leader, right? That's somebody that I think that if I would known all these things, I don't know. I can't go in the past and I can't go in the future. So knowing what I know right now, it is hard to run a business, lead a life, and be honest and virtuous in all these areas. It's a practice, but the meaning that's brought to me by doing that has well overshadowed any financial relational gain that I've had from success. That being said, the other caution to somebody that's chasing things and the stuff of this world is that it's only temporary. Your life, everyone listening, you, me, it's limited. Call it 120 years. That's all we have here. We can't take it to the grave with us. We're not taking it on to the next, to this next experience that we have. I say, eternity. So the challenge is to look at it from that view. Like, now, if you look, if there's somebody that is a claiming, atheist, this is it. What is it? What is the word? That's a nihilist, right? That this is all that there is. And they want to live well in this. They want to do good, not be honest, live an honest life and do these things. I just want to challenge that person to say, like, just consider, open your mind, talk to God, right? Ask, like, please reveal yourself. Be humble for a minute. Don't be the proud person that's only looking down at this world and not looking at what's above, what's eternal, because there's consequences. There are absolute consequences. And it's tough because I can argue both sides of the coin, right? You're a great example of this. If you understand virtue, you understand value, you live out these things every single day, and then you become disciplined, you make goals, you read, and you do the things, you are probably going to experience a life on this world that's not riddled with guilt, and it's not terrible. That's like the scariest thing for me to even consider. Somebody that's living that way, that's not like prompted by this guilt, and they're going to miss out on eternity. Now, that's where I have to, again, turn that back over to God, understand that through all areas and all medium and means, he's going to reach out and touch someone's heart. And I'll use you for an example, right? You're the one that says, I'm trying to live well. I'm trying to live honestly, virtuously, do these things. And I'm living the fruit. But I know from our conversation, there is something going on. There is a draw to the truth. There is a draw to things spiritually. There's a draw to things eternally. You have this awareness of it. So that quells my fears of, if that's the right word, that's quenches my fear of, or that subsides my fear that, if somebody lives so well, they might miss out on this. God will reach out and touch someone's heart all throughout, any which way. So I wanted to argue that pretty good, like that this short-term gain is not, it is what it is. It is a potential short-term gain with no long-term. So, a vision does keep popping up into my mind. And again, this is me, and this is like other people that I've talked to, like, so as a man, right? Like, pornography is a real big thing in our world today, right? Some are like, yes, nothing wrong with it. It's normal, this, that, whatever. So my experience as a growing young man and getting into that, like, there was always some type of guilt right afterwards, right? So that's like a very clear example for a young man that may have dealt or struggled or been involved in something like that. That's how I can equate the short-term success of business in lying. Like, you may have some, while you're going after it, while you're searching after it and looking for it, there's like excitement, journey, right? Like you said, the adventure of life. You get a great like feeling, like boom, euphoria, but for some reason, shortly after, it just rushes in guilt, right? And like, and so for me, that led to, a lot of repentance. So that being said, I equate that vulgar, that's a rough one, right? Like, that's a rough word picture or metaphor to bring in and equate it with lying, cheating, stealing, firing, controlling, navigating of a business. So And we're talking about that part of life. That doesn't, for me, that doesn't stop there, right? Like I have relationships with my wife, my children, those around me, friends, counterparts, strangers, people in the world. Like these actions, we're talking about a business standpoint, but these are something that I have to apply in every area of my life to fully be authentic. So I'm going to digress on that end. There's no winning. You don't win here, right? We have an experience here in this world. And my challenge is that I believe that there's value today, right? Like, so I don't say like, oh, this is an end result, like just suffer this whole lifespan while you're here, because there's this unknown pot of gold in eternity, right? That is not my experience. My experience is right here, right now, when I practice humility, humbleness, honorable and righteous behavior, I am so rewarded today, right? Like, and I always get sucked back in. Like that's been my experience so far. So I want to encourage anyone that's considering or listening to take some time and think about your spiritual relationship with God, who He is, who you are, and where you're at. So I'll digress on that. I know that we're getting closer on time. I'm okay to go a little longer, but I want to make sure if you had any final thoughts, questions, that we have a chance to unpack that.
My last question is, considering what we've discussed today, I see this as the first of maybe some likely series of conversations on these, if you're willing to have on the Culture Matters podcast. What would you say is how do you encompass this conversation into a theme for the guest and a takeaway? Why should they listen to it again? That's my question, two-part question.
So is the one question, would I be interested to keep down a series?
It's funny because you could ask.
So how would I encompass this and why would they listen to it again?
Yeah, those are the two questions. The other thing, I didn't really ask the question. I just implied that you hopefully come on again so we can talk about that offline. I love that.
Got it. So, as I'm an external processor, right? So we talked about proud men, proud human, looking down, looking up, thinking about the interaction that we have, being honest, what's value, what is it in how to navigate through this life, eternity. I think that to summarize it, it's hard to put a summary on all that. Nothing's really jumping out at me to summarize a concept of it. Question really, like, do you know who you are in relationship to? And, do you know who you are in relationship to God, right? Is the most important. Do you know who you are in relationship to those around you, in your business, in your community? Do you know who you are? Because, there's so many things that I don't know. I didn't know. I didn't know who I was in relationship to God till I was aware. I didn't know who I was in relationship to business till I was aware. I didn't know who I was in relationship to those around me until I was aware. So, I like it's a, and that's not really the answer because it doesn't summarize it. It's an introspective question for the reader. Do you know who you are? Right? Like, and this doesn't answer for them who they are. It's revealing of who I am for sure. And what was the second part? I forget. Summarization and what?
Yeah, like why should they listen to this again? Or maybe a few times.
Yeah. Really similarly to that. So they can really, because the only thing that I have to offer is me, right? What you have to offer is you. When you and I speak together, we get to, trigger certain thoughts and questions. but really they're going to look at themselves through the medium of us, right? The things that, oh, that guy said he's that, he does this. They'll have to look at themselves through that. So it's still the same question. Who are you? Right? Like, who are you? Who do you think you are? Right? Like, that would be the reason for them to rewatch it. Like, because I'm hopeful. I never know in a content like this, like, oh, because in my mind, everything that I'm saying makes sense, right? And it makes sense to me because I know what I'm saying, and I allow that to go. But from a listener's perspective, I don't know if it's making any sense. So they did try to re-listen to it, try to get into my mind, as well as, and I say this without, not just as word, as weak word, as reality. If somebody wants to know, like, or like how, like, if they think maybe they're relating, but they're not sure and they want to ask me, they can, because I was unclear on these things. So I may have heard somebody say this type of stuff and not even thought that it applied to me. So that would be, and another reason to listen to it again and dissect it would be to see, is it something that they can find a value in, right? Can the listener relate, to understand, to own that for themselves? And hopefully the goal would be that I'm representing it well, that this is a great relief to not live in those type of actions, and they can discuss it with you or I, and have some clarity for their own quality of life. So their own benefit. That would be why they would listen to it again, not to know me or know the stuff that I went through, but so they can potentially review themselves in that audio. Does that make sense? That's my answer. But does that make sense what I'm saying?
Robert, thank you for agreeing to do this.
Okay.
I got more questions, so we'll have to shelve it. And I really appreciate you and your mind and where this ended up, that I didn't expect or intend. But that quote, I'm glad I picked it. And thank you all for listening and going on this journey of introspection with us. And we will gratefully see you on the next episode of the Culture Matters podcast.